And we are live. Well, actually, we're not live. We're recording. I'm pretty anxious about someday going live with this stuff. All right.
Yeah, it's a big deal doing it
Yeah,
live.
it is. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Portals Podcast. My name is Scott Love, and I will be your host on this epic journey into the world of the fascinating and inspirational. Today, we have a special guest with us, calling all the way from Asheville, North Carolina, Rhiannon Burke, who is doing a lot of amazing work on the ground level there in Asheville. And so it's been 3 weeks since this horrible experience, Helene, happened. And Rhiannon has been there uh, helping literally pull the city up from the mud. And so we're going to ask her a few questions and but let's start with how are you, Rhiannon?
Yeah. Well, I'm doing well, all things considered, and I'm noticing just myself feeling really touched by what you described, and a recognition that I'm certainly not doing this alone. And I think
Right.
that's a testament to the beauty of these communities and the capacity of humans in general. So, yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm honored that you're here. So, what was life like for you before Hurricane Helene? What were you doing?
So I work as a licensed clinical mental health counselor here in Asheville. And I'm a movement artist, and I'm plugged into some of the creative artist scenes. I enjoy spending time outdoors, engaging with my loved ones and my pup. Yeah, there's a very vibrant culture here in Asheville. And it certainly makes for an exciting life if one so chooses to plug in.
That is awesome. Okay, so I've seen a lot of people posting on Facebook and other social media about how the burnout is starting to happen, and people the reality of what happened to the area and to them personally is starting to set in. Are you seeing that happen to the people around you with your coworkers or people in the community?
Yeah, I think that we're all experiencing this in different ways. And there's certainly this recognition of my own experience now that kind of that peak intensity and just go, go, go has subsided some. There's this level of like recognition of like how tired I really feel. I also myself personally returned to work a couple weeks ago. And so it's interesting to hold both this foot in one world of like, oh, we're working for an organization, we do what we do, and then also my hometown and surrounding areas has just survived a natural disaster. And I see a lot of people navigating that in different ways, but certainly starting to settle. And this, like, we've had some resources come back online. There's a sense of like, okay, my loved ones are safe, I am safe, and like, where do we go from here? And I think it's a lot of like just what is right in front of us. I have certainly been ensuring that I think I've gotten the most sleep these past couple days than I have in a lot of my life, just recognizing that I really need it.
I can't imagine. It's um, and the thing about it is that it's day in and day out and day in and day out, and you're trying to hold some type of support system for the people around you, while including the people this that live in the area. I mean, really, the whole work is to clean up and save people. And I don't know, maybe I'm in my imagination. It just seems like you're talking about you feel moved. I feel moved when I think about all the things that people are experiencing there. So, are you taking time to have moments of self care? Are you taking sure that you're drinking enough water? Like, how do you remind yourself to do this in the midst of all this?
Yeah, yeah. I think in a lot of ways we kind of help to remind one another, encourage one another, and though I am grateful to have a job to return to, it has created a situation of kind of go, 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 and from one piece to the next. Grateful to have access to where we have been operating out of this warehouse, someone who's willing to cook and serve us delicious food, and that's available. Certainly, it's my body demands it at times, and it's more of an afterthought. And so trying to get better of like, oh yes, stay hydrated, do those things, really like fill my own cup to continue to pour from.
Right. Yeah, I've experienced that where I don't. It's learning to do that was trial and error, and there was a lot of, because if we don't, then we ourselves get burned out. So I worked at the summer camp for a number of years for at-risk youth and emotionally impaired kids, and when I was on, man, I felt like kids were attracted to what was going on. There was always activity. A camp director said, Scott, like when you're on, you are so on. In fact, you're so on that when you're a little off, it seems like you're way off. So that was because I didn't know how to take care of myself. I would be on, like they say, the brighter the light, the shorter the fuse, or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what that phrase is. All right, so people are doing the work there for all sorts of different reasons, whether it's to help their friends or their family, whether it's to save their house, but really what it comes down to is love. They're doing all the work out of love, which is really the core reason we do anything. Which brings me to your name, the name of your organization, Operation We Are Love. Can you take a second to let us know how you came up with that name? Was it a process, or was it just like, it has to be this? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I certainly wasn't imagining that I was naming an organization per se. I was just trying to utilize some information to get out to raise some funds. And it was an operation, to get the resources to the people. And in my community, there's a good friend of mine, Logan McSporin, and he kind of had that catchphrase, like, we are love, this is what we do. And it's become a larger catchphrase in my community, especially, we work to put on different events together, things of that nature. It's this artist community. And so it just like, in my mind, though I knew that there's a potential for this to reach out further, like my hope was to get goods to my direct community. And
Right.
so that's where that came from. And that idea of like, we here, like all of us on this earth are love, and this is what we do. And what that is service,
Right. That's awesome. I have this mantra that I run in my head. It really helps me get to the core of things, I guess. And that is, I am one with the light and love of the universe. I am one with the light and love of God. And sometimes I break it down to each individual word, and I take a little, and it just makes the impact. And so when I see Operation We Are Love, it's we, the community, when one or more are gathered is a we are, that's a statement, we are, and then love, and it's simple, but I think it's impactful. It's incredible. It's powerful stuff right there. So are you native to Asheville, or?
No, I'm not. I guess I am what you call transplant. I've been here about 8 years now.
Okay, very good. What attracted you to Asheville? Like, what was your first time there? What was that all about?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to visit the Appalachian Mountain Range as a young person and totally fell in love with it. Went to college in this tiny town in West Virginia. And then I headed out west for my graduate degree to the city of Boulder. And though I really loved the culture of Boulder in a lot of ways, I really longed for the Appalachian Mountains. And I kept hearing, like, you got to check out Asheville. You got to check out Asheville. People would even joke there was a secret underground tunnel between Boulder and Asheville. And so a good friend of mine's sister happened to live here. She went to UNCA and came to visit, was able to see one of my favorite musical acts at the Orange Peel, kind of gallivanted in the city. It was such a vibrant night. It happened to be New Year's Eve, so that probably really added to the festivities of it all. And yeah, I loved what I saw in terms of the art. I loved where it was nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, and And so I told myself I wanted to get a little bit more acquainted with it, but I was pretty committed to wanting to then move there next.
Very cool. Uh, what's your favorite part of Asheville? Do you have a favorite part of Asheville?
There's so many. I think the environment, um, this feeling of like this lush womb. It's this welcoming, teeming with life. And it's a beautiful part about being in the Appalachian Mountain Range in general and in Asheville. I will say the rolling blossoms in springtime are just magnificent. One starts and it's this cacophony. They just pick up right after the other. Um, I find myself being like, oh, this is my favorite season each time the seasons roll around. So, in terms of the culture, one of the things that drew me here was the art and these ways of being creative and community oriented collaboration. And as someone who grew up dancing and I was struck by just the capacity to take dance classes as an adult, plug in and do dance performance, that was supported when in a lot of areas, it's like, if you're not pursuing that professionally and you're not a kiddo, there aren't a lot of resources there. And it's really special that there are so many ways for individuals to plug into their passion and to do so in cooperation with their community.
Yeah, it's so I'm an artist, and when I first started on this that's led me to this, I started a magazine called Indie Script, and it was subtitled "Documenting the Independent Spirit of Art, Music, and Culture," and it was in Detroit. And in the process, I started noticing that there was certain kinds of people that were attracted to our events. And those people were art, well, of course, artists, but a lot of healers, right? And a lot of spiritual people started coming to the events. And I noticed that, well, I didn't notice, I just felt like that was how I wanted to spend my life. So when I ended up in Asheville to create an event back in 2012, I had a chance to narrow down what it is I'm trying to call in, what I'm trying to generate in my life, what I called the 4 pillars. And that's sustainable living, natural health and wellness, personal/spiritual development, and community culture and activism. So when I landed in Asheville, I was surrounded by all of that all the time. And I literally felt like I was in a bubble of heaven on earth. And there's, of course, there's the political stuff, and there's personalities, and there's all sorts of, humanness that we deal with too. But it was fantastic. I can't, and I have a very deep, heartful connection with Asheville. The only reason I moved away is so I could be closer to my family, and moving back is not out of the realm of possibility. Um, so yeah, it's amazing. When I see these videos of people, and there's a lot of videos coming out now about the disaster, and I'm seeing the heartbreak in the people. I'm feeling it right there with them. So yeah, were you in town when the storm happened?
We were literally flying out as the storm was moving in. There was kind of this threat, like, will we be able to get off the ground with this weather? So many of us didn't really quite comprehend what was about to happen. I was starting to kind of hear these whispers and references to the flood of 1916. I can't say that I'm the most dialed in always with the news or the forecast,
Right.
but there was this like whisper of like this could be really major. And I think for the most of us, we're just like, oh, okay, we're gonna hunker down, we're gonna do the thing. There may be some roads that aren't passable, the parks won't be able to be accessed, we may lose some electricity. And so I guess it was come Thursday, Friday. I had flown out on a Wednesday. I think it was Friday morning, starting to see some pictures of like what had happened just from the rains on Thursday night and how much flooding was occurring. And I certainly was starting to get concerned. And as I was, engaged with communication with my loved ones in Asheville, that's when I started losing contact with people. 8 hours, 12 hours. It's been a full 24 hours. And I started to get really concerned. I had thoughts of like, should I be planning to fly back in? How am I going to get home? What's going to be there? Is it even possible to do so? I started talking with some of my academic advisors around like how to make sense of it. I know we're now kind of getting started in like this now feeds into how did this Operation We Are Love begin? And so like I want to just be mindful of answering the question you asked, but
Oh,
it
go
wasn't,
right into it. Take it where it goes naturally.
yeah. I had already, in this state of uncertainty, I began calling family and friends that were not in the area, really kind of spinning out a bit about how intense this was. And I don't think many people, even in Asheville, were really quite aware at that time. I was starting to see little snippets like the French Broad completely covered roof to the roof, of
Yeah.
these buildings. And as I was engaging with family members, I don't think there was quite this recognition. And even in the national news, I saw some statements about, well, it looks bad, but we don't have all the information. And it was just like, wow, this is clearly catastrophic. In talking with one of my dear friends in particular, I was uncertain, like, what should I do? Should I fly home? Will I be able to get there? And I had already had a flight booked to Charlotte on Sunday night. And so I foregoed my flight into Asheville, or that was my plan. And as I was talking with this friend, it was like, well, I'll pick you up from Charlotte. I'll drive you to Asheville, which is a couple hours away, and we'll see. Like, we'll see if we can get you in there. We'll see if we can get you to your loved ones and see if your home is okay. And he was like, it'd be really great. Maybe they're probably going to need some resources. And I was like, yeah, let's rent a U-Haul truck, right? And that then sparked this, like, I moved internally from this place of like, oh no, what is going to happen? And what's going to happen to my life, my loved one's life, the area that I live in, to like, what can I do? And I made a post. I made a post on social media saying what my plan was. I did my best to kind of blast it out there. And the response was astronomical. I felt like I kind of struck this match, and communities both near and far were like, here, put this wood on it. Let's pour some gasoline.
Nice.
And it's resulted into this like massive bonfire that was unexpected and also quite humbling, and I was really grateful. There's a strong connection of artists and the burner community from Asheville to Charlotte. And so people in Charlotte really helped to hold that initial like kindling, if I continue to go with that metaphor. And we ended up starting by filling like a couple, like two 26-foot trucks. The financial donations just started pouring in. And these resources, we began to be able to tap into the community's resources. And it was amazing to see how it was just like without any effort. It was happening faster, I think, than any of us could really even keep up with, which was so inspirational. And yeah, it gave me a place for my fear to go. As you were talking about love, I was like reminded of that. Like, we make decisions from two places, out of fear or love. And when I was first seeing everything happening, I was filled with fear and then struck with this, like, what is right in front of me? What can I do for these people in this place that I love, and I was so grateful. It was like, whew, like this, though it's been, it's taken a lot of energy and effort. It was a saving grace, I think, for a lot of us. I think even those individuals who have been able to donate, to offer their time and efforts, or who have been able to receive resources and services, it's just like, it's giving, our souls, like soothing it. A lot of people are displaced without employment, and it's giving us purpose and
Right.
meaning. And I think it's tethering us to the essence of what it means to, I want to be mindful, but that like that tribal energy, that's in our nature, what we are as humans.
Wow. It's as if you were given the opportunity to, outside of labels, outside of roles, outside of expectations, just be who you truly are. And it wasn't even like a matter of, okay, this is how I have to be who I am. You just showed up and it came out. And as a result, the universe provided you with, and the other people, with the things you needed. It's just pure, and it's real, and it's altruistic, and that's fantastic. We are love, right? That's what's up. Very good. Do you think that people had enough advance warning from the weather, or do you think that
Yeah,
they good?
um, as I said, I know we were hearing some whispers, and I was definitely seeing like people on social media be like, I think we really need to lean in and kind of take this seriously. I can't say that I have the best awareness of what was happening in the news. I do know from like what folks, as I've talked about, like what was happening as this storm was coming in, like was evacuation of some of these areas ever called. And I do know that they did start to evacuate some of the Riverview areas and things of that nature. But it's a hard thing to say. I really don't think any of us quite expected this.
Yeah,
And
and it's
and it's
almost like a silly question because how
sure.
could you? It's like saying, well, if I know what's going to happen,
Well, and I saw, I've seen some like postings of like asking us to prepare for flooding in this way is kind of like asking maybe for someone in Florida to prepare for a blizzard.
yeah,
It was hard for us to really conceptualize. And I don't know if anyone was alive from the 1916 flood to really kind of comprehend what can happen in this area. And it's, 100-year flood, so to speak. And I've heard all sorts of descriptions in terms of like the catastrophe and how bewildering some of it is.
right.
And
What makes me nervous is it's 100-year flood when the environment is normal or when there's not sea rise going on. But how is it going to be 100-year flood? Or is it going to be every 50-year flood? Or is it going to be every 10-year flood? Or is it going to be every single time? You know, and it's a big mystery. What's going to happen? How do we
yeah,
rebuild with the uncertainty?
I'm not a scientist. I'm
Right.
not a politician, but curiosities around how the changing of our climate and the ways in which we've operated along our riverbeds. I know I was just engaged with an individual last night, and he's a local, and he has put a bid on helping with some of the restoration projects. And we're really, we're hopeful as we build towards restoration, some of the local know-how can help plug in. And he's talking about, how do we be more environmentally conscious around our riverbeds so that this doesn't happen, like that erosion. I mean, the way in which the French Broad River is now a good 150 feet across, in terms of that's not how it was beforehand. And so, like, how to utilize different ecological techniques to ensure the stability of our riverbeds. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really beautiful thing, and something that we have an opportunity to. The loss and the devastation is incomprehensible, and we are also given an opportunity to rebuild in a more mindful and symbiotic way.
It's I had this conversation with somebody the other day. It felt a little awkward to say at first, but it's to me it's almost as if I know about a little bit of the history of the Asheville area, going back, say, the last 20 years, whereas 20 years ago it was kind of empty and it was like a burned out mountain town. And then artists started being attracted, and then they started taking over the places, and it turned into like this artist spiritual mecca. I heard that Asheville is where broken dreamers go to heal, which was perfect. Um, it was for me. And so, and then it started getting national recognition as being like this really cool place to go. And then tourism took over, and then a tourism board was formed, and then all these hotels went up, and all these Airbnbs went up, and all of a sudden the people that created that magical place are being pushed out, and they can't afford it. And then along with the excess of commercialism comes draining of resources and misappropriation of just all sorts of things. And so, in an odd way, in my mind, I'm hoping that what this storm was, if there's a reason for it, kind of a thing out there, it's almost as if the storm came in, shut it down, scrubbed it clean, and said, no, okay, now all you guys out there with all these great ideas, how would you have done it in the first place? Let's do that right now. The time of complaining about the way other people are doing shit is over. And right now is your time to do it. Do it now or don't do it. Maybe that's a little aggressive, maybe a little aggro, but I see it. And the thing about it is that you are the people doing it. You know, it's fantastic. You're the whole crew. Tell me a little bit about the crew. Like, who are they? What are their backgrounds? That kind of
Well,
fun
and
stuff.
if I may, I'd love to just speak to some of what you just
Oh,
named,
absolutely.
and I certainly don't know the reason this storm occurred. I do know that we get to make meaning of it as we so feel called, and I want to identify like the history of Asheville moving back a century or so, and the ways in which, not only just the more recent community members have felt pushed out, but historically how Black and Brown people have been pushed out. And one of the things that strikes me is that I have had more engagement with Indigenous people, Black and Brown people, than I have in my time living here. And to see those communities come together and for us
In the
to
last
really
few
get
weeks,
to,
you mean?
yes, yeah. And
Nice.
I mean, the level of segregation can be striking here. And though there is some diversity, there's just a lot of like kind of, you know, I don't, it's, I think that there has been some historical pieces that have intentionally done that. But I think a lot of us are just kind of going through our day and, we see what we see and we know who we know. And this has really allowed us to really get to know even our neighbors better,
Right.
let alone, different communities and types of people. And I mean, all walks of life. And it's not about us and them. It's not about what your religious views are or your cultural background or your political preferences. It's about like us being human and needing one another, that we are interconnected. And I think that's been such a beautiful thing. And I hope that that can carry through as well, that all of us, no matter what, can be lifted up. And I think, some of the movers and the shakers and the people with the trade skill and the ecological skill, they are really hopeful that they have an opportunity to be a part of that versus pulling someone from the outside in. Now, granted, so many organizations, companies have been helpful. They've stepped in. That is by all means, we are grateful for that. I am grateful for that. I don't want to speak for all of Western North Carolina and beyond. And we hope that when it comes to really like rebuilding, we lean into those that have that know-how here, and that it can really we can fill our cup, so to
Right.
speak, as a community.
No, I think a good way to do that would be to make sure that someone with the ability to express those ideas make it to the city council meetings and make it to the city planning meetings or the county meetings, that invite the officials up to the table with you guys to break bread, so that when it comes time for the planning, they recognize that you have a voice. And so I might take a look and see if I can find any type of city board meetings that are scheduled and put it at the end of this video, So, and this is all coming to me on the spot. So we'll see what
Sure.
happens. So that anybody who's interested in going to have their voice heard can go to those scheduled meetings. Now, also keep in mind that some meetings are private, some meetings are public. Um, but yeah, I've been to a couple of city board meetings before, not necessarily in Asheville, and they bring up the topics, and then at either in the beginning or at the end, they usually open up the floor for people to raise their hand and say, "Hey, yeah, I have this idea," or "I have this question." And if a few of you are there, then that it shows that there's a lot of support behind that idea. So I love that idea. Let's make sure that it's not just, I'm not saying it's gonna be, but corporate favoritism or political maneuvering to get organizations and businesses in place that are not looking for the locals' best interest. And which, do you plan on having Operation We Are Love get involved locally, politically? Maybe not politically as in, hey, I'm going to run for office or anything, but political means just being a part of the conversation.
That's that those are dialogues that are occurring right now. Initially, Operation We Are Love was an endeavor to get resources to the people, and it has become this hub and this place of refuge and resourcing for the community and beyond. And it's gotten much bigger than any of us have anticipated. And to even conceptualize us as an organization is like, oh, no, we were just doing a thing, and
Right.
here we are now. And community organizing is not my forte. It happened,
At least you
and
didn't think it was.
no, I guess not. Yeah. And so, there are talks we're exploring like LLC versus nonprofit. We will certainly need to collaborate with a nonprofit, but we are exploring becoming our own 501c3. And, we've kind of called together a loose board, so to speak, and we're going to be having some of our first meetings next week to talk about what does this look like. I think a lot of our energy right now has just been like, what is right in front of us? And now we're getting a little bit of spaciousness to see like, okay, what is ahead of us? And what does Operation We Are Love look like as we move forward? But
Right.
all of this it's like, I feel like as if I'm trying to keep up with how it is progressing and growing, which is beautiful. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Are you familiar with B Corps or an L3C? Have you heard of those before?
No, I have not.
Okay, so it's been a while since I've formed one, but the Emergence Creative Space was originally, no, sorry, Emergence Theater, which was before Emergence Creative Space, was originally formed as an L3C. So an L3C is basically what they call a social entrepreneurship, which is basically, I'm a structured business. I'm structured as a business, but written directly into my minutes is the what we're going to do with our economics. And it demonstrates that the majority of, or maybe not the majority, but a percentage, it describes how you're going to spend your money and the good that you're going to be, like the seen need that you're providing. Now, it's not tax deductible when people contribute, because most of the contributions would be through like a purchase of something, or the purchase of a service, or like 3DL was originally part of an L3C, the social entrepreneurship, so that the tickets that people purchased, they couldn't write off the purchase of that ticket. But when the money was spent going towards creation of the festival or some of the activities that we did outside of the event, there's just a lot of tax benefits to it as well. So it's like a business and a nonprofit at the same time. Just check it out. And then there's the B Corp. I think down south they're called B Corps.
Okay, great. That's helpful because yes, we have had so much generosity that making sense of that in a way that kind of helps keep our T's crossed and our I's dotted is something that we're still trying to navigate.
Right. Sometimes it's just a matter of not making mistakes. It's not necessarily we know what the heck we're doing. Like, no, our energy is focused on making sure that we're doing it right now. And something else I'm going to suggest that could help you is there's a branch or under the Small Business Administration. There's an organization called S.C.O.R.E, S-C-O-R-E, and it is basically a collection of small business entrepreneurs that have created mentorship programs, and they offer all kinds of free resources to organizations that are just getting started or small businesses. And I can send a link to that as well,
Yeah.
in the comments of this for anybody listening that's interested. And I mean, they'll help you do everything from creating your, if you're looking for grants, they'll teach you, like, okay, it's everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to get grants, I'm just going to fill out this form. Well, no, the grants go to people who seem like they have their shit together. So S.C.O.R.E is going to help you make it seem like you have it together. You know what I mean? And it's awesome, and it helped me quite a bit in the past. Okay,
Thank you.
so what are some of the goals you have with Operation We Are Love?
Well, at this time, our goals are to continue to get resources to individuals in need, this ability to network. So those who are needing certain services, those who are capable of offering or providing those services. I think it's been fairly short sighted in this like place of survival. And with some of our meetings coming up next week, that's where we really hope to brainstorm, what does this look like? Or how do we help continue to serve our community? How do we help maybe potentially support other communities in like this disaster relief? I certainly am not a disaster relief expert,
Right.
and looking back, I think our hope is to like, well, what did really work well with what happened here? And is that duplicatable, like replicatable? Anyway.
Right, right, right. You may not be a disaster relief expert, but I'd be willing to say that you probably at this point have a little more experience than a lot of people that call themselves disaster relief experts, because you
So
did
there's
it. You're
something
there.
about the lived experience,
Right.
certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So,
it's, yeah.
no, go ahead.
Well, I think that those goals are still really unknown. And I think in some ways, like wanting to be mindful of how do we lay a solid foundation under us, make sure we've done the work we've set out to do so that we can then dream a bit bigger as we move forward. And it certainly seems as if there's interest in the community to sustain this organization, to sustain the We Are Love.
That's fantastic. Okay, so just let's take a snapshot if you just in your heart and in your imagination. What would you personally like to see We Are Love become?
Yeah, I find myself curious about how we can lean into either disaster relief and or under-resourced areas, helping to connect them to one another. What does it actually look like to create community? Of course, the mental health provider in me wonders. I have a meeting tomorrow with another therapist on like, what does it look like to try to create, this trauma response in relationship to this event? And
Well,
knowing
that's
that I've,
huge. That's huge. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so could that then be a part of or umbrellaed underneath of Operation We Are Love? What does that mean? And I think when I really drop into my heart, it's about connecting people to people and resources, and that we are the resource to one another.
Right. And of course, that's where you go, because that's what you do. You're let's how do we take care of each other beyond just the physical, the psychological, the emotional, the trauma. It's I've had a house fire, and I lost everything. That was pretty traumatic. And it took me a few months to get over it. And there were times where I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to use." Oh no, that's gone. But this is that to the nth degree. This is like, holy smokes. This is like everything. And that's not just one person. And so then you got like trauma feeding off of trauma, bouncing up against trauma. And like, how do you step into these communities, into these bubbles, and, you know, present trauma release, trauma support? Like, if right off the top of your head, and I hate to put you on the spot, but someone who's watching this that neither one of us are ever going to meet. They just happen to click on this, and they're like, what are some of the symptoms that of being in shock from trauma that they can should do like a checkup from the neck up and see if they might be experiencing PTSD or something.
Yeah. So post-traumatic stress is normal. That's something that most any of us may experience in response to a stressful or traumatic event. PTSD becomes a little bit different. That's when it's happening at an intensity, frequency, duration that is significantly impacting our ability to engage in our day-to-day life. I think we often think about trauma as, these major events that happen, though chronic stress impacts our nervous system just like trauma. And I would even dare to say the amount of stimulation we experience on a day-to-day basis is stressful, taxing to our nervous system. And that can look a myriad of ways, but oftentimes there's this emotional irritability or emotional withdrawal, an inability to kind of access what we call executive functioning. I mean, I have just felt very like muddled in my mind, unable to kind of track things, know what's happening. It can look like it can present in somatic ways, having physical symptoms, a variety of pain, inability to sleep, oversleeping, inability to eat, overeating, right? And so I certainly would encourage folks to, you can do a lot of your own education around like, what does trauma look like? And I think that unfortunately, in general, many of us are operating under the impacts of chronic stress and trauma. And I don't want to undermine the 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 magnitude of this event. But yeah, that would be my response. I hope
Very
that's
good.
helpful.
Um,
Yeah.
when interacting in these situations, it's first of all, fuses are shorter. We don't know what is going to trigger somebody, and I'm just talking about like the people that are on the ground that are experiencing this right now. As we move forward, be mindful not just of our own trauma. I'm not there, but I'm feeling trauma from it. Maybe it's an echo. I can't say that I'm even remotely feeling what other people are feeling, but I do feel it. And so let's be so that's when I say that's what I'm talking about. Let's be mindful of the fact that it's not just our trauma. There's other people, and other people are interacting with other people. And sometimes I have to think about it. It's almost like let's try and be the light for other people. It's the light in the dark room. What's the number one? What's the most important thing for people to consider when they feel themselves having a reaction to trauma?
Yeah. Well, of course, leaning in to our loved ones, but really importantly, seeking professional help. And I think that can feel really vulnerable to people. And I think that healing and therapy can exist in a variety of contexts. And know that there are professionals available who can help assist and assess and maybe make recommendations in support.
That's fantastic. I actually saw, and I think I shared it on my wall. I'll go back and see if it's updated. There was a list of mental health professionals that were offering free services in the days immediately after. I'm not sure if that's still going on, but I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so on point. So, can you tell me a little bit about the team that you were working with? Where are they from? What are they into?
Yeah. And so, most of the people with kind of boots on the ground now are locals or have resided here for some time. And we're certainly a hodgepodge of all sorts of people, but I would say that a majority of the individuals who have plugged into serving come from the burner scene, the artist scene, those who, that these back to the landers, those with the know-how. What are our natural resources? How do we make sense of those? I will say initially there were a lot of communities out of Charlotte that helped to plug in, but again, kind of related to that artist burner world. And I will say, that it's interesting. I have found myself just in a lot of ways individuals who have been preparing for this. They have the capacity, they have the resources, the know-how, the connections with one another. I guess it's like, so how do we replicate that in a community where that's not already like, I was able to plug into someone who was an owner of a distribution company. He's a burner. He loves his Asheville folk. He was willing to give us two 26-foot trucks. Like, where, like, how do you do that?
Right.
And so I think that just makes for a really interesting piece. And I know I got tangential there, and hopefully some of that is usable. But we are just everyday people, you know, we're just everyday people who care. I think for, like I named before, for a lot of people, it gives them something to do, to lean into. I think like healing and connection. And that's in itself so vital at this time. Yeah.
What are some of the immediate needs that Operation We Are Love could use at this moment?
Yeah, financial donations are helpful. It certainly then allows for us to be flexible because the needs of our community are ever changing. Some of the things that we've learned of like what was in demand a day or two ago is no longer as in demand. Then we learn more about communities. It's like actually they're wanting those things. And so, you know, we've tried to make sense of the space that we have available, the needs right in front of us, those who aren't able to access us in such a readily available way. I would say with the cold weather being what it is, camping gear, ways to stay warm, clothing. You know, we're looking for a lot of like propane stoves, get like ways to create fire, heat, warmth, money for fuel items. But then there are still like the basic necessities that are needing to be met. And as individuals navigate unemployment, I think those resources are going to still be like very important for folks, you know. And so sometimes we'll get feedback of let's shift gears because of the changing needs, but then we'll hear in the community like, oh, it's actually really wise for us to continue to keep, you know, just getting the basic necessities from non-perishable food items. I mean, potable water is huge right now, though many
So
parts
water
of
filters.
yes, water filters. Many parts of Asheville have water, though we're uncertain of like the safety of that, and there are still many areas without safe water. And so, ways of supporting in that regard are life saving.
Very good. Is there a place? And I got this. A couple of people asked me this. Is there a way for people to like a address for people to send things through Amazon, or if they want to purchase goods from Amazon? You know, my thought would be, you know, first I would recommend uh, making a financial contribution so that there's no differential. You know, like the Amazon's not getting their percentage. Not that, you know, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that, but I think a financial contribution directly to Operation We Are Love. I guess what would be the best way for someone to send a financial contribution to you?
Certainly, yeah. I'd say as of now, the best route is through our GoFundMe, which can be found by searching "urgent help for WNC hurricane relief." There was a time
Urgent
that
help for I'm sorry, urgent health for WNC emergency relief.
urgent help for WNC hurricane relief.
Urgent help for WNC hurricane relief. Awesome. So they would go to GoFundMe.com/ and then
The urgent help for WNC hurricane relief.
very good. Very good. All right. And cool.
And if somebody wanted to mail donations, you know, mail had been kind of off for some time, but it seems like that is returning and is more reliable. The address of the warehouse, or for those who feel inspired to trek supplies into town, is 8 Riverview Drive, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. and packages are able to be received there. We do ask to be mindful. Please communicate with our organization or other organizations if you are traveling into town, so that we can ensure your efforts are going to meet the need in the best way.
Oh, that's good stuff. What inspires you right now? What gets you the most excited about what's going on right now?
I think like what really moves me is the ability to trust ourselves and one another, the ability to lean in, seeing human beings as like we are love. We are a reflection of one another, and my well-being and your well-being are interconnected. And I think the empathy, the capacity for love and desire to support really moves and inspires me. Um, yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Rhiannon. I really truly appreciate you taking the time. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all turns out. Yeah, I'm gonna stop recording now. Oh wait, no, one more thing. One more thing. All right. So before we sign out here, how would someone get in touch with you directly if they were trying to reach out to you? What like are you on social medias?
Yes, yeah. So Operation We Are Love is both on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find us on Facebook as Operation We Are Love and on Instagram as Operation underscore we underscore are underscore love. And those would be the best ways.
Underscore.
Yeah.
Underscore. All right. Thank you so much. Much
Yeah.
love to you, and God bless. That's cheesy as shit. I'm not gonna do that. All right. All right. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
I
You're
appreciate
awesome.
you. Thank you.